the youngest of 9 children, so as you might imagine, my mother always had her hands full. She worked full time and would come home to cook for a house full of hungry people. There were so many of us constantly demanding her attention. If I ever wanted alone time with her, I would hang out in the kitchen while she cooked. She was always making something delicious. She'd make a caldo with homemade flour tortillas. On Sundays, we had fresh menudo. There'd be pork pozole on birthdays, and Christmases were filled with tamales. So many tamales. Cooking amazing food was how my mom showed us love. Not surprisingly, I now make these meals for my family, although in much smaller quantities. Food was how my mom kept her heritage alive. We never talked about it, but I can only imagine how comforting it must have been for her to be able to hold on to a little piece of her hometown in Jalisco, Mexico. And not only hold on to it, but also to lovingly pass it down to her children, one meal at a time. For so many of us, wherever we're from, food is love, food is comfort, food is community. It's a universal language. Food knows no borders. It transcends cultures and brings us together in so many ways. And that is why I'm excited to talk today with an internationally acclaimed chef, political activist, author of Philippine-X, Heritage Recipes from the Diaspora, and dare I say, a culinary celebrity and just all around incredible human being, Chef Angel Di Mayuga. This is the Nilk Freedom to Thrive podcast, powering pro-immigrant narratives, one story at a time. I'm Victoria Ballesteros, Executive Vice President of Narrative at the National Immigration Law Center. Chef Angel, hi, it's nice to see you again. Welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here, Victoria. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. So I want to jump right in, if that's okay. You have accomplished so much in your career, and I want to name just a few highlights because there are so many. Zagat 30 Under 30, James Beard Foundation Award for Best Chef, Creative Director for Standard Hotels. You've been invited to the White House, and your career has literally taken you around the world. That is so impressive. How did you get here?
Well, I was a young kid that knew that I wanted to be a chef since 5. And
Wow.
I always think about the privilege that I had to be supported to do this untraditional career at that time. There wasn't a sense of cooking as a career, but my parents trusted me that I knew what I was talking about, and they are immigrants to the US, and I was part of the younger set and more Americanized of all the kids in my family. So that was supported, and I followed my path and kept thinking about cooking and cooking in my own way because there weren't folks as a young person that was doing it in any way that I knew was possible, and learned a lot of family recipes along the way, and learned through my career to really appreciate where I come from and the flavors of my heritage.
How wonderful. And what is your heritage? Where are your parents from? And what so you're 5 years old. Most of us are learning our ABCs when we're 5 years old, but you're already deciding that you want to be a chef, which is amazing. Was cooking just a big thing in your family? Food was that an important feature growing up?
Yeah, my parents are from the Philippines and they immigrated to the US in their 20s. Being first generation meant that I had to learn about where I come from at my own pacing and through my own pacing of curiosity. I didn't know that my mom is from a place where people are viewed as excellent cooks in Pampanga in the Philippines. And I learned that through cracking open a Savior magazine and see a 10 page spread on Pampanga. And I'm like, wait, this is where we come from. I come from a lineage of great cooks. And yeah, food was a big part of my upbringing. There weren't celebrity chefs at that time. There was no Food Network. So at 5, I was waking up on Saturday mornings watching what was available to me on public television, which was PBS, and watching actually home cooks like Julia Child and Jacques Pepin make their own family recipes, or what Julia Child learned as an adult in culinary school in France. And then I had the opportunity to do chores in my family in ways that were exciting to me. So I was doing laundry for 8 people, and that was tedious. But I also found excitement in helping out in the kitchen. So I wanted
Yeah.
to make my chores fun for me and sort of replicating what I saw on TV or just watching what my mom and grandmother were putting together. So I was just observing, and it was supported. My
Yeah.
silly ideas were supported and taken seriously.
I love it. And so I want to confess to you, I have a secret obsession with ube. I will eat anything ube. Ube cake, ube anything, ube ice cream. Do you have a favorite meal or comfort food that you go to when you're feeling nostalgic, or maybe, I don't know, if you're traveling the world, do you ever miss home? And is there something, a meal that you go to for comfort?
Yeah, I got to eat so much Filipino home cooking, and that also I believe is a privilege to have matriarchs that can do that for me as a young person. So working on my cookbook was a time traveling experience to just think about things that I loved and then remember flavors and seasoning and apply that as an adult to when I was missing home. When I left home at 17, so I needed to figure out ways to remember home on a budget.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite dishes is really, it's not fancy. It's a one pot dish, and it's a mung bean stew using green mung beans, and it's just cooked with vegetables, lots of vegetables, maybe a little meat if you have it, but you don't need it. And then you eat it with a bunch of rice, and it's just really nourishing and comforting. And I would
Yeah.
add things that I didn't use growing up, but added things as an adult to get some iron and nutrition as a young chef with no money really. So I'd add
Yeah.
things like collard greens, and try to and make this for crowds for my friends that also were on a budget. I could make a giant pot of stew, and a bag of mung beans were about $2 and still is. So I love those flavors, and it's um, it's just really enjoyable to replicate that for folks that haven't had ingredients like that. And in America, we have them in
Yeah.
Chinese groceries and things like that. So we have access, surprisingly, to these traditional ingredients to my heritage.
That sounds amazing. So, where did you go when you were 17? Did you go somewhere that was part of your journey as a chef, becoming a chef?
Yeah, I originally was supported in going to culinary school, which was just a 2-year program. But I was really interested in taking courses that were things that I didn't know you could really study. I went to a private Catholic all girls school growing up. So what we learned there was what I knew. And so I was always eager to leave home, leave San Jose. I had a lot of curiosity of culture outside of San Jose. And a lot of that was through listening to like punk and emo music. I was a pretty angsty kid. So I loved mixing with different crowds at these concerts. And they, to me, feel like they were sort of like the pre experience of being around queer kids and folks from other cultures.
Yeah.
And so moving away from San Jose to experience my own life and study different subjects was really important to me. So I'm really happy that I started my life out with getting a getting a humanities degree, and I could make it my own and study in a really interdisciplinary way. And I do find that um, being able to have agency to choose courses of my own interests really applies to the way I approach my work in the culinary world. That foundation um, which I was privileged to have as a first generation kid. And um, I I think that I would be a completely different person if I just jumped into culinary school and worked straight into kitchens. It allowed me to have critical thinking. And I think that's why I've always sort of challenged the status quo of what kitchens are
Yeah.
and what our cuisine that we're sharing could offer. That's more than a delicious plate of food, but something that you can think about and think about who made it and why it's here.
Yeah. I wanna go into that a little bit because when I think about famous chefs or even just chefs that I've read about or seen on TV, I can't think of any others who are Filipino. So in many ways, it seems that you are blazing a trail for your community, no pressure, but that is not an easy thing to do. And so I'm curious, what were some of the challenges that you encountered as you've gone up the ranks in your career, and how did you stay motivated?
Yeah, I mean, these environments, I was really lucky and I was a really ambitious young cook. And I found myself in kitchens that were intimidating because people above and around me didn't look like me.
Yeah.
But as I moved through the ranks of continuing to be a serious chef, working crazy, unhealthy schedules of like 90 hours a week, I could only think about how to make these environments more viable to me, which meant it was more viable to people around me, diners, etc. And so I needed it to be fun for me, intellectually stimulating. And over the course of my career, I became more known to not just make delicious food consistently on a plate, but thinking about the environment, what restaurants and the dining experience could be, not for just food journalists and food reviewers. We weren't making food just for them, but we were, for me, it was important to bring in different age groups, have different price points available, try to make the menu equitable. Uh, think about, and I was starting to think about restaurants as a place that could be a creative hub, a place for ideas, a place for artists. And that made it fun for me. And I
Yeah.
think finding joy in a really um, challenging work environment physically made me excited about going into work every day and sort of transforming it into a place that felt like a fun playhouse for me, which it could be for others.
Chef Angel, is cooking a type of storytelling?
Yes, I think about that all the time. Getting to be an artist that creates flavor feels like such an accessible opportunity to learn about a person and where they come from, what their history is, or what their work experience is, even. I make what I call grandma food, but I also make really wacky conceptual dishes for in the fine art setting, or when I'm not only cooking Filipino food. And flavor is that direct access point to a moment of wonder and curiosity of what you even put together when you taste a medley of flavors. You might get to know me a little bit better, but I get to know you if I get to talk to you about it and hear what it brings up for you.
You sort of touched on this already, but one of the goals of this podcast is to ensure that we share our stories and truths and build power for our stories and truths. And so, in your experience, how does food play a role in storytelling and bridging culture and even keeping culture alive?
I think it's an opportunity to dive deep into who you are. If I grew up in restaurants, of course, as an American, that felt like I needed to learn cuisines from places like France and Italy because that's where there was this seriousness around a young cook. If you learn these classical, quote unquote, cuisines. But right there at home, you could have super technique driven food that isn't viewed that way. And there's this opportunity to really think more critically about who we are. We don't need to put ourselves in this hierarchy that has been we've been told exists. And there's a lot of opportunity to dive in deep of who you are and where you come from. You get to look at least for me, my experience is like learning about this ancestral trauma that's happened in my family and take agency over what there are, for me as a new generation, take agency about what our stories can look like. And I'm so proud to see a lot of young folks that I've either mentored or watched grow their careers in New York, celebrating their home cuisine and do it boldly with like really loud flavors or a lot of spice, things that people have been afraid of. And this opens up uh, the 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 culinary landscape, or just other folks' curiosity about maybe a story of, I think about some chefs that I know in New York. Their parents were Cambodian refugees, and the flavors that you can access from what they're proudly sharing is just so profound. And there's just a lot of opportunity of really getting to learn about yourself when you give yourself a chance to take yourself out of these structures that we are told we belong in, and that's down and out. And we don't need to be in that place at all.
I want to read you a quote from Anthony Bourdain, and I wonder if you can share your reaction and your experiences in relation to something that he said. He said, the entire restaurant industry in America would close down overnight, would never recover if current immigration laws were enforced quickly and thoroughly. He then went on to say that immigrant labor is the backbone of the service and hospitality industry. What's your response? What's your experience been?
It brings up a lot for me. There is opportunities to learn so much about culture through cuisine. It's direct storytelling. It's a portal into flavors and reasons why certain people can't be in America. It's me trying to think more deeply about what my parents' experience was in the Philippines, think about access, think about borders. But it also makes me think about this type of labor that happens with immigrants is really, I think about this a lot. In the Philippines, 10% of the GDP comes from overseas workers. And so that creates a whole different culture for what a Filipino in the diaspora's experience with connectivity of people like you. We're constantly seeking each other. And I'm seeing folks like Filipino aunties working in places like um, the airport or in the hospital, nursing homes. I'm thinking about other folks from immigrant cultures that think about hard work and the power of food in a different way. It's not just about being a well-known celebrity chef, but it's also about hard work being something that you are is in your blood. It might come from ancestral trauma. It might come from your mom or dad working a certain way and you wanting to just make them proud. And people have, folks from all different parts of the world, they have their reasons of why they want to be in America, for example. And that might mean working really hard to think about the next generation. So there's just so much. It's just a different way to think about hard work and the power of how you can preserve, or maybe it's preserve your culture, or it's about survival. There's just so many layers to what that means, and I think there's a lot of pride that we can have in these different versions of our experiences.
100% in agreement with you on that. Thank you. Let's shift gears for a moment. I want to talk about your book. Tell me a little bit of what is it about? What was the genesis of that? And where can people find it?
Thankfully, people can find it anywhere. I've seen it being placed in small independent bookshops. It's in big box bookshops. It's on the internet. It's even being sold as used book at this point. It's awesome, and so you can easily access it. It's called Philippine Heritage Recipes from the Diaspora.
I am someone who will burn soup. So, does someone need professional training or just a major skill set to make the recipes in your book?
One of the most popular recipes in the book is called coconut milk chicken adobo. And
Oh,
those
that sounds
are
amazing.
ingredients that you can get at your regular grocery store anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's been so exciting to see folks in the Midwest cook it. These are accessible ingredients: coconut milk, vinegar, soy sauce, garlic, black peppercorn. And this is a one pot dish.
Yeah.
You're burning soup. You're gonna be okay to do this. Just make sure you put it on simmer, Victoria, and you're gonna be fine. But it's been so great to see people of all levels of cooking being able to have this sort of gateway Filipino
Yeah.
food. And the flavor combination of soy sauce and vinegar is one that people may not have had. So I think that's a great starter recipe. So everyone out there listening, you can make coconut milk chicken adobo.
I'm gonna try it. I'm excited to try it. Are there any ube recipes in the book, or is that next level?
No, there are ube recipes. I feel like ube, I love that you love it. There's something so enticing about this purple grimace Barney color that we don't see in
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
And so it's been really fun to see it hit the mainstream. Um, I think it's a, I think it's a really fun, enticing flavor, and you can get it. You can get ube flavored things at Trader Joe. It's been a surprise, but yeah, there's some ube dishes in there, so you got to give it a whirl, Victoria.
Oh, I love it. I can't wait to try it. So, you exemplify to me someone who is thriving and living up to your promise and potential, which is amazing and a great example for all of us. And at NILC, we believe in a vision for this country where all of us can thrive and where the country lives up to its promise and potential as well. So, I'm going to give you a magic wand, and you get to wave your wand around and reshape this country. What does your reimagined country look like?
Some of the reimagined country looks a little bit like the same. There's a lot of people in my community that are applying themselves with their own passions and skill set. Being in hospitality myself, that means I know how to throw a great party. I know how to be a host. And something that I did back in 2017 was try to create these utopias of spaces at nightlife. And we've been able to bring together for about 8 years now people of people that are BIPOC, people that are lesbian and trans, in, into these spaces of joy. But that type of community building can sometimes feel like a bubble. And so we also need to think on a larger scale of, instead of individuality and individualism, collectivity. I'm so focused on liberation of my people that are overlooked. I, I come from a background of multiple times colonization, um, and colonization, abolished prisons, and apartheid. There's a lot of different ways that we can think about applying ourselves in this. We have these microcosms and little worlds that we apply ourselves, but how do we think bigger? And I think there's a lot of collectivity that's happening right now, and so exciting to see in the younger generation.
That is a powerful vision. And I love that you've included joy in that liberation because joy can be a radical concept. And so I appreciate you flagging that. I'm going to throw one last question at you before we sort of start to close out. And that is I'm asking for a friend. Um, the friend is me. If someone wants to try your food, are you cooking somewhere at a restaurant where someone can go and try your food, or are you just sort of
I'm,
traveling the world?
I'm bopping around at this
Okay.
point, restaurants, and I've worked in restaurants for many years. I worked in hospitality by way of hotels. Right now, I've been able to enjoy this lifestyle that's better for my mental health, better for my physical health, and working freelance. And
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to do that. But I get to bop around and do things for the public. I'm going to be doing a small event at the ICA in LA and making little free treats for people with a Taiwanese fellow artist. And so we're going to make these almond jelly little treats. And so I do small scale events, I do private events. And so, if you watch out, there might be something going on. And I'm always somewhere unexpected. But it's a little Carmen San Diego at this point. But I try to both do things at like, a large scale, a fine dining type of cuisine, but I love cooking accessible food. And so I really prioritize that in the type of jobs that I take. So just give me a follow, I guess.
Are you on Instagram? How can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram. I post occasionally, and I definitely post the events that I'm participating in. So yeah, just Angela.DiMayuga. And you can find me. But I really love this idea of being able to feel close to me and close to my story and my family story by cracking open that book,
Yeah.
and tasting flavors that way too.
I love it too. And I'm going to follow you on Instagram and I promise not to stalk you. I know the line.
You're welcome to.
Thank you, Chef Angel, for being here with me today. And I wish you continued success. I'm really excited to see what you do next. And I want to thank everyone for listening and taking time out of your day. It is so important that we keep telling our immigrant stories and our truths. For more immigration truths, visit us at NILC.org and freedomtothrive.com. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. I look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you.